The night Marcus Whitmore lost everything, he was standing beneath a flickering street lamp with a torn blanket around his shoulders, watching the woman he had secretly fallen in love with walk past him without knowing who he really was. For the first time in his life, the billionaire had no expensive suit, no luxury car, no bodyguards, and no one calling him sir. He looked like just another homeless man forgotten by the city. But what happened over the next 30 days would teach Marcus something money could never buy. True love does not ask what you own before it decides whether you are worth loving. Marcus was 38 years old and the owner of Whitmore Holdings, a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He lived in a glass mansion overlooking Los Angeles, drove cars most people only saw in magazines, and could buy almost anything he wanted. Yet every night, when the mansion became silent, Marcus felt more alone than he had ever felt on the streets. His parents had died years earlier, and after several painful relationships, he had begun to believe that everyone who came close to him was interested in his money. One evening, after another woman told him she loved him while asking about a luxury vacation and a new diamond necklace in the same conversation, Marcus finally reached his limit. He decided to conduct an experiment. He would disappear from his wealthy identity for 1 month and live as a homeless man named Michael. He wanted to know if anyone could love him when there was nothing to gain. If you believe kindness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of the greatest story. Marcus donated his expensive clothes, rented a tiny abandoned-looking room through a friend, and began sleeping in shelters and on public benches. He wore an old jacket, allowed his beard to grow, and carried only a small backpack. His security team watched from a distance, but nobody was allowed to interfere unless his life was in serious danger. At first, Marcus thought the experiment would be easy. He quickly discovered how wrong he was. The cold nights were brutal. Food was uncertain. People avoided eye contact. Some walked around him as if he were invisible, while others looked at him with suspicion. For the first time, Marcus understood how painful it was to be judged before anyone knew your story. On his 5th morning, Marcus sat outside a small bakery in downtown Los Angeles. He had not eaten since the previous afternoon. His stomach ached as people carried warm coffee and fresh pastries past him. Then a young woman stepped out of the bakery carrying a brown paper bag. Her name was Clara Bennett. She was 29, worked at the bakery, and lived in a tiny apartment with her younger brother Nathan, who was struggling to recover after losing his job. Clara noticed Marcus sitting alone, but unlike everyone else, she stopped. She looked at him for a few seconds before sitting beside him. Without asking what had happened to him, she opened the paper bag and handed him a sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. Marcus stared at the food, almost embarrassed by how badly he wanted it. Clara simply smiled and told him that everyone deserved breakfast. She then returned to work before he could even thank her properly. That small moment changed something inside Marcus. He began returning to the bakery every morning. Clara never treated him like a charity case. She remembered his name, asked how he was doing, and sometimes slipped an extra meal into a bag at the end of her shift. Marcus soon learned that Clara herself was struggling. She worked long hours because she was paying rent, helping Nathan, and quietly saving money for nursing school. She had dreams, but she rarely complained about how difficult life had become. One rainy evening, Marcus found Clara standing outside the bakery, crying quietly while looking at an envelope. He asked what was wrong. Clara admitted that her landlord had given her and Nathan a final notice because they were behind on rent. She had already used most of her savings for Nathan's medical bills after an accident. Marcus wanted to reach into his pocket and solve everything with one phone call. He could have paid the rent for a year without noticing the money disappear. But revealing his identity would destroy the experiment, and more importantly, he wanted to know whether Clara cared about him rather than the wealth behind him. So instead of giving her money, Marcus helped her find a second-hand job opportunity for Nathan through a local community center. He spent hours helping Nathan prepare his resume and teaching him basic interview skills. When Nathan finally received a job offer, Clara cried with happiness. She hugged Marcus tightly, and for a moment Marcus forgot that he was pretending to be homeless. He simply felt like a human being who had helped another human being. Weeks passed, and something unexpected happened. Marcus stopped caring about the experiment. He began caring about Clara. He loved the way she spoke kindly to elderly customers. He loved how she saved the last piece of bread for a stray dog behind the bakery. He loved how she never talked about expensive things, but became excited when discussing simple dreams, like having a small house with a garden and helping sick people as a nurse. Marcus realized that Clara had never once asked where he came from, what he owned, or what he could give her. She only cared about who he was. Then, on the 29th day, Marcus received a message from his assistant informing him that his identity had been exposed. A photograph of him had been taken outside the bakery, and the news had discovered that the homeless man was actually Marcus Whitmore, one of America's youngest billionaires. The following morning, reporters surrounded the bakery. Clara stepped outside and saw Marcus standing beside a black luxury car with several security officers. Her face immediately changed. She stared at him as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Marcus tried to explain everything. He told her why he had done it, how afraid he was that people only loved his money, and how meeting her had changed everything. But Clara was devastated. She wasn't angry because he was rich. She was hurt because he had tested her without trusting her enough to be honest. Marcus thought he had finally found true love, only to realize that his own fear had nearly destroyed it. For days, Clara refused to see him. Marcus could have used his influence to force a meeting, but he didn't. Instead, he waited. He returned to the bakery every morning, not as a billionaire, but as the same man who had once sat outside hungry. He apologized without excuses. He told Clara that if she never forgave him, he would accept it because she deserved the right to choose. On the 7th day, Clara finally walked outside. She didn't ask about his mansion. She didn't ask about his money. She simply told him that love couldn't be built on secrets and tests. Marcus agreed. He told her he didn't want someone who loved his wealth. He wanted someone who could see him when the wealth was gone. Clara looked at him for a long moment before taking his hand. Months later, Marcus transformed part of his fortune into a foundation that provided housing, food, job training, and medical assistance for homeless families across Los Angeles. Clara continued working toward nursing school, but now Marcus supported her dream openly, not by buying her love, but by believing in her future. Nathan eventually became a successful mechanic, and the three of them remained close. A year later, Marcus and Clara stood in a small garden behind their new home, surrounded by friends and family. There were no cameras, no reporters, and no extravagant decorations. Just simple flowers, warm sunlight, and two people who had learned that love was not about what someone could provide. It was about who stayed when there was nothing to gain. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes genuine kindness still exists, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us that humanity is often worth more than wealth. And before the story ends, comment, "True love," if you believe a person's heart matters more than their money. Marcus once believed he needed to hide his fortune to discover who could love him. In the end, he learned something far more important. True love wasn't found because he became homeless. It was found because, for the first time, someone looked beyond everything he owned and simply saw Marcus, the lonely man underneath the billionaire. And sometimes, the greatest fortune in life isn't the money sitting in your bank account. It's having someone beside you who would still hold your hand if every dollar disappeared tomorrow.